In this presentation, we will create a custom income statement from a profit and loss standard report within QuickBooks Pro 2020, QuickBooks Desktop 2020. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the View drop-down up top and selecting the Open Windows list. We're now going to be taking a look at our income statement or our profit and loss report. That's going to be our starting point. We're going to go to the Reports drop-down up top. We will go to the Company and Financial and then select the Profit and Loss Standard. Within the Profit and Loss Standard, we're going to change the dates up top from 01/01/20 to 12/31/20. That's January through December 2020. This is going to be our standard profit and loss report. We're going to make some changes to the reports using the Customize Reports field in a similar fashion as we did with the balance sheet. So we're going to go to the Customize Reports up top. One change that we might want to do is to go to the header and footer. You might have some clients that prefer to see an income statement. So you might want to just change this or customize the report for some people rather than calling it a profit and loss report. We're going to change the name to an income statement. So then if someone asks you for basically an income statement, you can in essence just create the profit and loss report, rename it to an income statement, and that is your income statement. We're also going to be removing the date prepared, the time prepared, and the report basis. So we're going to remove these three items on the left side. So if we say OK, then we have that. Now we have our income statement rather than the profit and loss report. We're going to do some adjustments to the fonts now. I'm going to remove the pennies on it so we don't have the cents in there. We're also going to make negative numbers be represented with brackets and with red. So we're going to go up top. We're going to go to the Customize Reports once again. That's going to be in the fonts and numbers. Within the fonts and numbers, we're then going to go in and say that we want to have the negative numbers represented with the parentheses, like so. Then we're going to remove the pennies, remove the cents. I'm also going to make the negative numbers here to be red. So we'll have them be red, like so. And therefore, the negative numbers will appear like this, and we're going to be removing the pennies. So we're going to say OK. And there we have that. So we've kind of cleaned it up. It looks a little bit easier to see without the change in there involved. And we have the brackets and negatives for the negative numbers. The next thing I would like to do is go into the expenses and the subcategories, into the categories, and reorganize the categories with the largest number on top. So you'll note that right now we have the expenses and then it's in order by alphabetical order within the category. What I'd like is to have the largest number on top within the category. Now we can do this by the sort item here, or we can do it by the items over here. We're going to go to the Customize Report. If we go into the Customize Report, we'll see that same kind of sorting options here. It might be easier to see, however, in this format. So we're going to say we want to sort by the total, and then we want to have the ascending. I'm going to say descending because I want to have the largest numbers on top. So we're going to be the default, not the default, it's going to be the totals. The totals, and then in the descending order, and say OK. And now you'll see it's still in order of income, of course, and then expenses, or income, cost of goods sold, and then expenses. But now we have the largest expense on top, which might make it a little bit easier to read because our eye will go from top to bottom. We'll see the largest or most relevant expenses then at the top of the report. The other thing we often see in the name here when we have an income statement, we often see for the year ended December 31st. So rather than have January through December, that's an accurate title for the report, but we often see the terminology within an income statement for the year ended and then the year end date. So let's change that one. So I'm going to go back up into the Customize Reports once again. We'll go into the Customize Reports. We're going to go into the header and footer once again. And then instead of having January through December, I'm just going to delete this whole thing. And I'm going to type in for the year ended December 31st, 2020. And then if we say OK, so now we have this, and that's kind of a more formal for the year end kind of date rather than listing the date range. We'll often say for the year ended or for the month ended. Next thing we're going to do is add an extra footer in this, and we'll just put our name on it. We might put like the name of our firm or something in the footer. So I'm going to go to the Customize Reports. We're going to go into the header and footer. We're going to go down into the extra footer, And we're going to put the name here. We're just going to call it Smith, CPA. We might put something like that, or something like, accounting on the, or bookkeeping, whatever the name of our firm. We might put that on the report. Might be something we can add there. And so I'm going to say okay. And then if we want to see that, then we'd go to the print option to see the preview option. We're going to go to print. We're going to go to the report. And then I'm going to go to preview. And then down in the bottom, we'll have our firm name here. So that'll show up there. I'm going to close this back out. So I usually use the X, or you can use this button here. I usually close it out with the X, however. So I'm going to go ahead and close this back out. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to keep this for now. This is going to be our format. If I want to memorize this, I'm going to put this in our memorized reports now. I'm going to go ahead and memorize this report. And it's going to be called an income statement. Notice it picked that up from the name here. That's what I want to call it. Rather than the profit and loss, we'll call this an income statement. That's one way we can kind of customize our QuickBooks reports. Another way we might want to differentiate ourselves a little bit by just basically changing that little name change, and then maybe some, a little bit of font change. A little goes a long way. And then we want to save it in the proper group. So we're going to put it into our group, not in accounting. We set up in a prior presentation, my reports. So we're going to put it into my reports, and then I'm going to say okay. So there we have that. If you have the audio on, you'll hear a little camera that will take a picture. And then we're going to close this out then. And then let's go into the reports and see if we can then find it. We're going to go into the reports. I'm going to go into the report center. Within the report center, I'm going to maximize the screen here. I'm going to go to the memorized reports. We want to then go into my reports. Now we have two in here. We have the comparative balance sheet and the income statement. You can also get into this area with a drop down up top by going to the reports drop down up top, memorized reports. And then we want to go into my reports. And we have, once again, the comparative balance sheet and the income statement. I'm going to go back into the income statement. So here's going to be our income statement back to our report. Now we're going to save this. Now we've been working on in part 1 or section 1, we've been working on putting on into the balance sheet reports. Now we're looking at the income statement. I'm going to save this in a PDF format. I'm actually going to save it in the section 1 folder because I want to put all the financial statements basically together as we go through this. So although we're in section 2, I'm going to save it in the section 1, and then I'm going to save it into the Excel worksheet as well that we have been working with as we go as well. So I'm going to save them in 2 different formats. So I'm going to first go to the print item up top. I'm going to print it as a report, and then I'm going to use the Qt PDF printer. So I'm going to go ahead and print this then. It's then going to pull up our printing item so that we can see where we want to locate it. If I select the drop down, I'm in the Get Great Guitars. I'm going to go into keep it in section 1. And I might even change the name to call it, maybe I should call this section 1 through, I'm going to right click and rename it. I'm going to call it section 1 through, I believe 4 is going to be included here. And then we'll go into section 1 through 4, which is more appropriate name. And then we're going to go in and we'll rename it. I'll put it into the financial reports 2020. And then I'm just going to call this an income statement. So we're going to say this is going to be an income statement for 2020. And I'm going to say save. And then there's that. Now I'm also going to export it to Excel, an existing workbook. So I'm going to select the Excel dropdown. We're going to create a new worksheet. However, I'm going to put it into the existing workbook that we did in a prior presentation. If you don't have one, then you can just make a new workbook. But we are going to put ours into an existing workbook. Then select the browse item. Within the browse item, we're going to go to where we need to be. It's going to be on the desktop. I'm going to go into the QuickBooks folder, or the Get Great Guitars. Get Great Guitars. We're in section 1 through 4. And then I want to pick up the financial reports. Picking up the financial reports and then exporting to it. Here we have it. You can see it's getting a little bit longer here. We're going to do some of our normal kind of upkeep, and that's going to be to delete this first tab. I'm going to go to the first tab, right click on the tab, delete it, and say delete. And then I want to go back to the sheet 1. I'm going to pull sheet 1 to the right. So I'm going to pull them all the way to the right. And note that you might want to reorganize these in some other fashion that I'm doing here. I'm going to reorganize them in the format that we created them. So you might want, for example, the balance sheet and the income statement kind of like the starting points of your reports. And then, so I'm going to pull this to the right, however, because that's the order in which they were created. Then I'm going to go to the layout view. So we're going to go to the page layout view. and say OK. Within the page layout view, we see the splits now. So I'm going to go up to the View tab up top, the Windows group, remove the splits. Then I'm going to rename the tab down below by double-clicking on the tab and calling it an income statement. I'm going to abbreviate, and this is going to be for 2020. So income statement 2020. Then I'm going to go back to the normal view. That's what we have. Now I'm going to save all these reports then on one PDF file. So we're going to go to the File tab up top. Then we're going to go to the printing option. We're going to be printing it using the Qt PDF printer. So we're going to send it to a PDF printer. Then we're going to select the entire worksheet. So we want to select the drop down here. We want to select the entire workbook, not the worksheet, workbook, the entire workbook. And then that'll give us 6 pages. So we got page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. Looks all good. Everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and print this. It will then print to a PDF printer, in essence, saving the file as a PDF. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to overwrite this file with it. I'm in section 1 through 4. We're going to say save and yes. And there we have that. Let's see what it looks like now. If I was to open up the section 1 through 4, this is how we can save this data. We can either give someone, basically if we're imagining we're going to send an email with everything that we have printed thus far, we can give them 5 different attachments to that email, which is getting a bit tedious at this point, might be overwhelming for the person that receives that. Or we can zip the file, so I'm going to delete this zipped file, and now I'm going to zip it. We could say, what if I compress this file? Then I can send the compressed file with 1 email, and they can just basically open up that 1 compressed file rather than 5 attachments. Might be a little bit easier. Or if they're okay with getting an Excel file, we can give them the Excel file. However, I wouldn't give that to somebody unless they liked it in that format. But we use the Excel file in order to then create 1 PDF file as well. So we could just send them this 1 PDF file, which would have all reports in it, including the balance sheet and the profit and loss report, the comparative balance sheet, and what we created now, which is going to be the summary balance sheet, and then what we created now, which was the income statement. So we can have the 1 report, which will in essence include all of those. So you want to keep in mind how you're going to group this stuff, how you would give it to someone else, how you would save it in your own files.